everyone, and welcome back to Colorful Sparks. My name is Dorothy, and today we are going to be discussing the entire Raven Cycle series by Maggie Stiefvater. I read this in January. If you watch the January wrap-up video, you'll know all of my star ratings and everything like that. So today we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of all 4 books. If you've read some of my book talks that I've written before, or if you watch the Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn video, both linked below, you will know that I grade books essentially on the blog by 3 different aspects, and that is readability, character connection, and plot. We'll go through each and every book first, and then I'll talk about the series as a whole and what I think this series as a whole should have as a star rating. So let's start with the very first book, The Raven Boys. Alrighty, so The Raven Boys is the very first book in our series, coming in at 419 pages. For readability, I'm giving this a 4. It was super easy to get started, as well as it was super easy to continue reading throughout the whole book. There were some parts that I felt the pacing was a little bit slow, but also that kind of comes along with the fact that this is the first book and has a lot of exposition and setup for the rest of the series that we're going through. So I can give it a little bit of leeway that way, but at the same time, it was also still pretty easy to read. As for character connections, I'm giving this book a 3, mainly because, again, it's the first book. I'm not super connected to these characters, but this book also builds those connections that I end up leaning on more towards the second and third books. So I feel like I have to still give it some credit for that at the same time. Meeting all of our main characters, Blue, Ronan, Adam, Gansey, and Noah, was pretty easy. I will admit I did have a hard time remembering their names in the beginning, just because it was kind of like, here's 4 boys. There you go. Obviously, though, it was easier to remember Gansey because in the beginning of this book, we do see him as a spirit because he has died within the year of St. Mark's Eve. So it was easier to remember him, but as for Ronan and Adam and Noah, I had a little bit of difficulty trying to remember their names, remembering who they were to Gansey and Blue in the beginning. And for plot, I'm going to be giving this book a 3, mainly because, again, there was a lot of setup involved in getting to know our characters, but at the same time, with Welk being kind of our antagonist of this book, it wasn't that surprising to find out that he was the antagonist. The surprising aspect of this novel is discovering that Noah is actually a ghost and is dead. We find this out because Blue and Gansey find his bones and his wallet, which is the only reason we find out. Had they not found that out, we would have continued believing that Noah was a person. But in the very first Welk chapter that we have, it's kind of easy to note that the way that this is being written is a lot different than the way that we have been experiencing Blue, Gansey, Adam, and Ronan's perspectives on things. So it was kind of easy to immediately be like, well, I'm pretty sure he's going to be the bad guy. Granted, I didn't expect him to have murdered someone in the past, but him being kind of, you know, a little bit evil made sense. The other reason that I'm giving this a 3 is mainly for the sacrifice at the end. The ending itself is kind of confusing with how it's written and how it's mentally, like how I picture it in my brain. So in the ending of this book, Welk has been, kidnapped by Blue's aunt Neve, and she is going to the ley line to make a sacrifice so the ley line can be awoken, which is a weird concept in itself and I still don't fully understand. But she kidnaps Welk because she figures out that he has actually murdered our good friend Noah. Throughout their moments on that kind of sacrificial place that they're on, it's just very obvious that Welk has bad intentions for the ley line, as well as Neve has bad intentions. And then there's a weird scuffle and Adam shows up because, well, I still don't even really know why. And then Adam ends up making himself the sacrifice where he doesn't die. He offers to be Cabeswater's hands and eyes in exchange for waking the ley line. And with this exchange, somehow Welk gets trampled to death by a bunch of beasts that just appear in the forest. I still don't really understand how or why, but that's what happens. So with setup as well as a confusing ending, I didn't feel like I could give it more than a 3. So that gives this book an average of 3.3. It is also the lowest rated book out of the series for me, mainly because of all the setup things, but at the same time, I still appreciate this for giving us A, our characters, B, our kind of momentum, and C, giving us that platform that we bounce off of into the second, third, and fourth books. The second book in the Raven Cycle series is The Dream Thieves, and this one I really enjoyed. I think between the second book and the third book, I'm pretty much tied for which one is my favorite. So for readability, I gave this a 4. I read most of this in one day. A lot of it was read actually in a bar during a Packer game and as a distraction and on the way back from my trip home. So I would say it went by really fast, and then it also felt very easy to continue getting lost in this story as compared to The Raven Boys, where I kind of put it down a couple times before I finished it. As for character connections, I'm also giving this book a 4. They grew obviously off of the connections that I had from book 1. Mainly this book ended up being more so about Ronan, which I guess I kind of struggled with because I wasn't very attached to Ronan from the first book. This book is the book that actually made me like Ronan more, as compared to the first book where he was just kind of there and he was painted a little bit to be a kind of a negligent character in a sense. So this book really built my connection for him. This book also ended up really building my connection to Adam. Adam really goes through it in this book, and granted he goes through it in the first book also, but at the same time, Adam ends up having to be more of an active participant after his sacrifice with Cave's water, and I think that really ended up helping him stand out more amongst like the other characters that we've got going on. As for Gansey and Blue, there isn't as much of a focus on them in this book, which I totally understand because we'll talk about them more later. But at the same time, I still spent more time with them, so I still ended up liking them more. And for plot, I'm also giving this book a 4, mainly because it kind of took a while for me to get to the point where I was really enjoying the book. I will note that the ending scene is very epic and I really loved it. You have Adam trying to fix the ley line so Ronan can defeat Joseph. I don't remember his first name. So Ronan can defeat Kavinsky with something that he has to dream up. And I really liked the aspect of kind of the teamwork in that sense, as well as seeing the fact that Adam, while technically speaking isn't directly involved where Ronan like precisely is, Adam ends up being the one that kind of saves the day for Ronan, because without Adam helping him fix the ley line, Ronan wouldn't have been able to dream up his, I think it's like a nightmare type beast, to defeat Kavinsky's weird fire dragon. So I think that is super cool. On the other side, I didn't really enjoy Kavinsky being more so like the kind of a villain, but also he's kind of like a side villain. Kavinsky didn't really have a part in the first book, and then he's kind of just here now, so I wasn't totally sold on him being a bad guy. Obviously, he is a terrible person and I really hate him, but I didn't feel like the transition to him being more of an antagonist really made sense in this book. I almost forgot a huge part of this book. A very big part of this book is the fact that Ronan can pull things out of his dreams, and that is obviously why the ley line has to be fixed. But because of this factor, there is a man who we know his actual name, but I'm going to call him the Gray Man because that's what he goes by, hunting him so he can sell him essentially to his employer, Green Mantle. And Green Mantle comes back later, but at the same time that Ronan is trying to figure out his dreams, we discovered that Green Mantle is the reason that Ronan's dad died, as well as the fact that Ronan's mom is a dream, which is why she's asleep, and that Ronan's dad essentially dreamed up their entire house. Which, wow. Like, talk about big plot twist. But with all of that dreaming aspects coming into play, as well as kind of being a main mechanic of this book specifically, I really enjoyed that difference, because it's not just magic, it's something different. Like, I haven't read a book before where someone can pull things out of their dreams, and I really enjoyed this. So overall, the average of the Dream Thieves comes out to 4, making it the second highest out of this series. The third book in the Raven Cycle series is Blue Lily Lily Blue. This is the other book that is tied for my favorite. I still haven't decided between the second and third. This book is also the shortest book, coming in at 389 pages. So for the readability of this one, I'm giving it a 4. It was super easy to get through. However, there were parts where I was a little bit confused and kind of had to stop myself from reading so fast, as well as the ending kind of required me to go back and read it a couple of times to fully understand what was going on, and I still don't think I do. So for those reasons, it is a 4. For character connection, however, this book is a 5. I felt finally very connected to all of our characters. This book is essentially focusing on Blue after her mom has disappeared in the second book. And so we find out more about Blue and her family life. We focus more on Blue starting to fall in love with Gansey, as well as kind of her relationship to the other boys in the group. So essentially Blue ends up getting into a fight with her cousin Orla, and it really causes her to realize that she loves all of the boys, even Gansey, even though Gansey is a little bit more of a romantic interest kind of love than Ronan, Adam, and Noah. But at the same time, I think it's pretty sweet. Noah in this book actually kind of scares me a little bit, surprisingly. He has some weird ghost moments that ends up having Blue have to shut herself off from him, which I think was actually a very interesting scene. There is this moment in the beginning of the book where Gansey has a panic attack because of going down into a cave and assuming that there are hornets in the cave, which he is deathly allergic to. I think it was a strong moment in this book that really helped it stand out against, you know, the rest of the 389 pages. And it also kind of comes back into play also for Blue, because she always kind of hears Gansey's voice when he was having his panic attack about the hornets. The plot of this book, I'm giving it a 4. Again, the ending really confused me. Also in this book, we have a completely different character, who is the antagonist, which, granted, this is kind of our main antagonist, but also not. So I still don't know how I feel about that. But at the same time, we also get a brand new character completely introduced to us to be kind of with, you know, the team. We meet Gwendolyn, I'm pretty sure, or Gwendolyn, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Glendower's daughter in this, which she was never asleep, so that was interesting. And then we have to deal with her being a witch, and she's a little confusing. As well as meeting Jessie Ditley, who's also confusing. Oh, and also in this book, Adam figures out that Gansey is meant to die in a year, which that was very traumatizing. Listen, there was so much that happened that I still don't entirely remember all of it. But the main reason that this gets a 4 is because of the ending. The ending, while being kind of plotted out differently, was also still confusing. By the time that I got to the part where Blue finds her mom as well as her dad, Artemis, we'll talk about him in the next book, I was confused how she got there over the water, because her being a mirror still doesn't totally make sense. B, the fact that her mom was struggling so much with getting up because the temptation to open the door was so strong was a little confusing. And then somehow, from the Ditley cave, Piper, Green Mantle's wife, stumbles through the cave directly into where Blue's mom and her dad are all just hanging out. I still don't understand how that's possible, but I guess it happened. And then they all left, and they kind of like collapsed a cave on top of Piper, which still doesn't make sense. And then there's an epilogue in this that has Neve showing back up, where she like has Piper open the door to the sleeper you're not supposed to, you know, wake. And I was just like, why did we bring her back? It just felt like she was just dropped there and was like, here's Neve. She, you know, I remember that cliffhanger that remember like that little plot point that I gave you in the first book? Yeah, here she is. But it still makes no sense how Neve got there, how she knew where to go, or anything like that. So it has to be a 4. I'm sorry, Blue Lily Blue. But that gives this book an average of 4.3, so it is the highest rated book. Even if I hate the ending. Alright, now we gotta talk about The Raven King, which is the last book in the series. I have feelings, and we're gonna discuss those feelings, but just know, going into this is not my favorite book. I don't think it would ever be my favorite book. I really hate the ending, and we'll get there. But just know, this is not it. Okay? This one is essentially Gansey's book, and it starts with the most heartbreaking prologue ever, where Gansey essentially admits that he knows that he's meant to die, and wow, almost cried within the first like 4 pages. But again, we'll get there. So this book for readability has a 3, which is a drastic difference from the other books, but it deserves it, because I found, even though I read this book all in one day, I found myself just struggling to get through it. I kept wanting to stop. I kept not wanting to finish it. I kept finding myself having to push through parts to get through it because A, it's the end and I really didn't want to finish it. B, at this point, this is the last book. And there has been so much tension, so much buildup. And as I was reading it, the pacing felt either too fast or too slow. There were moments that I felt like, I don't really care. And then at the same time, I got really confused. So I have to give this a 3 for readability. As for character connection though, this gets a 5. It's the last book. I've spent 3 books with these characters. I love them at this point. I was worried about all of them the entire time. I didn't know if I was only going to lose one person, if I was going to lose all the people, if like we were just going to have mental breakdowns left, right, and center. But overall, I was very connected to all of my characters in this book, rightfully so, because a lot of things happened to them where, you know, I felt very, very angsty while reading this book. Now for the plot. The plot gets a 3. Kenzie's gonna kill me. But the reason this book gets a 3, A, is the ending, which I will talk about. B, some of the shit, pardon my French, that happened in this book was not okay. Not fair, not appreciated, did not like that we had to do that, and while there is a great moment in this book, there is a character that kind of ruins it. So, let's talk. First, I need to talk about the ending first. I hate the ending. The ending is the worst ending of a series that I spent 3 books reading. 3 books built this bad boy up to find Glendower, to find him and get that wish and save Gansey, and Gansey's gonna die in this book because it's the last book, and guess what? Glendower is dead. He's not waking up anymore. I spent 3 books hoping that Glendower was going to be awoken, and guess what? He was just dead and he was just bones, which means he can't come back to life. Kenzie likes to say Glendower was the friends we made along the way. However, as much as I love that. I spent 3 books, so many pages, in the wait for Glendower to have him just be dead. There was absolutely no payoff on that. And that is one of the most frustrating things ever. I am a person that hates unsatisfying endings. To the point of like, I, as you can tell, will get very upset about it. I don't remember the last time I had an unsatisfying ending that hurt me this much. But guess what? We've got this one now. And then, while we're trying to recover from the fact that Glendower is just dead, we went into this cave for nothing, Ronan starts getting attacked in his dreams by a demon. I'll talk about the demon in a minute. And they have to pull over, and Ronan can't wake up because the demon keeps pulling him into sleep, which doesn't make sense to me. And then because the only way to stop him is for a sacrifice on the ley line. And because, you know, Gansey is already slated to die, guess who volunteers? Gansey! Richard Campbell Gansey III volunteers to die on the ley line! I was pissed. Okay, I was pissed. I was like, this is how it's gonna end. No, thank you. But it gets worse because we find out before we go to this cave, that Blue is a tree person. Yeah, that sounds confusing to you? Guess what? I had to read it. I'm still confused. She can live inside a tree if she wants. That makes no freaking sense. But because Blue is a tree, and she has like a mirroring capability or whatnot, her energy alone, through one freaking kiss, kills Gansey on the ley line. For what purpose? For what? For why? We didn't need that. And then he just somehow comes back to life. Cabeswater just somehow grants Adam and Ronan and Blue the ability to have Gansey back, even though they like made a new one, even though that don't make sense to me. I don't know about you, but that don't make sense to me. So he just can get up and walk around again? Does this mean that him and Blue can't kiss ever again? I don't know. There wasn't an explanation. I'm confused. So that's my thoughts on the ending. Obviously, I'm a little heated right now. I'm sorry. But I was very frustrated. Okay, we also got to talk about this demon. The demon ruined a good chunk of my thoughts during this book. First of all, because in the epilogue of Blue Lily Lily Blue, we find out that, you know, Neve somehow is alive. And then her and Piper wake up the third sleeper, which, by the way, is a demon. A demon. And the demon just wants to unmake everything, which doesn't make sense to me either. And so it just starts, you know, unmaking things, ruining things. Piper decides to put it up for sale for some reason. Don't understand. The demon ends up killing Neve. Didn't care about her, but, you know, that's still a little funky. And then Piper gets shot because she went crazy. And the demon doesn't stop then, and he kills Ronan's mom. I have never in my life been so attacked by a single antagonist in my life than this mother trucker taking away Ronan's mom just because he wants to. I was so angry. And then, by some way, he just decides to attack Ronan in his sleep. I don't know how that works, but also at the same time there's magic, so Blue is also a tree person. I don't understand how that works either. And, like, the demon made no sense. Why did it have to be a demon? Like, I didn't get it. We didn't need it. It didn't make sense to me. I'm sorry. I just didn't like it. Also, Blue's a tree person, which doesn't make any sense either. Another thing that I'm angry about, I forgot about this. The voice that Gansey heard when he, died because of a hornet's nest stinging, was Noah. And the way that this is described to us, is through a very confusing chapter where Noah is going through time somehow, and then he just ends up in front of Gansey and utters the words that Gansey has been waiting for, that Gansey has hyped up for 3 books. Someone is dying on the ley line when you shouldn't, and so because of Glendower you shall live. Which meant nothing. Nothing! Because guess what? Glendower's not alive! I'm still salty. The ending felt like a big load of BS because there was absolutely no payoff. The only reason that this book is a 3, the only reason, I'm telling you right now, this is the sole reason for this book to get a 3, because Adam and Ronan kissed and made out, and guess what? They were happy, and that was great! That's the only reason. Because Ronan got to be happy. That's it. Then it got rudely ripped away, and I'm so pissed, but Ronan and Adam are now together, and they love each other, and I think that's great. However, the rest of this book, I didn't like. It only got 3 stars, and it deserves it. I might have given it 2 had the Adam and Ronan kiss not happened. So there's that. This book has an average of 3.6. Somehow, because of the character connections, you got higher than the Raven boys. You shouldn't be ashamed of yourself. Let's discuss the series as a whole. So every single book in the series, I have kind of pinpointed how it is specifically character focused for one character. So the first book being Adam's book, the second being Ronan's book, the third being Blue's book, and the fourth being Gansey's book. I think it's a really interesting way to set everything up, as well as kind of focus in more on a specific character, to also allow the other characters that we're seeing to have more time in our minds as well. I also really enjoyed that none of our main characters seem to fit into a specific YA trope. The only one that could potentially come somewhat close would be Gansey. And even then, I still wouldn't categorize him as a specific, rich boy or, the popular boy, because underneath all of it, Gansey is still very intellectual and has other dreams than probably most kids his age. So there's that. And then also, I just wanted to mention that Ronan out of this series gets his own spin-off books. I have yet to read them or pick them up. The second one is coming out in May. But I will definitely be picking those up because I really loved Ronan and I would like to spend more time with him. But I thought this series was really good. I would recommend it, even though I got heated about the ending. I think it's at least worth it for the friendship, as Kenzie has decided to love to say, Glendower was the friends we made along the way. And granted, there was no Glendower, but I will admit the friends that we got to have and the friends that I got to witness were pretty great. Also, I think it's a really different kind of read than typical YA books. It falls more into the supernatural-esque kind of side of YA, which isn't really there that often without it being like a ghost story or a thriller. So I found that really interesting. With all that, if you even want to check out the first book of the Raven Cycle series, I will understand if you don't want to finish it. I still think it's worth a shot at least to give it a try. So, if you guys like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read the Raven Cycle series or if you hate the fact that I film these and rant about books for extended periods of time. Someone should tell me how long I spent ranting about the ending of The Raven King. Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this content, make sure to subscribe. I post videos every single Friday at 4 p.m. Central. And I'll see you guys over on the blog on Monday. Bye!